Yo, 5D, back on the podcast. Today it's episode 33, and it's called How to Pronounce Again. And the reason for that is we are covering AUTECHRE. Now, if you don't know them, they're an amazing electronical band, pushing envelopes and boundaries in the late 90s specifically. I actually went off them a bit after when the millennium came around, and wasn't really into any of their stuff after that. But their original 90s, the end of the 80s to 90s, we're talking about 2000 work, is some of my favourite music, and massively inspired me and loads of other people. So, quick little thing about it. So, AUTECHRE, thing is, right, is it's called How to Pronounce Again, because everyone, I started off thinking it was AUTECHRE, and then I had never really thought about it, and then I met someone else who knew them, and they were like, no, it's AUTECHRE. I mean, there's like, if you look at AUTECHRE, I don't know, it feels like there's more possible ways to pronounce it than a hell of a lot of other, ways you could combine letters or like names. Like, it just seems more unpronounceable, like specifically, like obviously. Anyway, but apparently, basically there are a couple of guys from Manchester, and they say, and they're the ones you listen to, that it's pronounced I'm not even sure, AUTECHRE. But they also say that it's not about that. You can pronounce it any way you want. Apparently this is meant to be pronounced with the Rochdale accent. That was their plan. But that it, just pronounce it however you like. So that's quite a nice little vibe there from them, straight off the bat. Plus, they did actually make the name by typing in the first two letters, AU, because that was intentional. But then the rest, they just came up with by randomly bashing on a keyboard, apparently. So, yeah, pretty fun way to come up with your name, and it's a good name, it works, it sounds good. So this whole hour is about them and their basically early work, because I'm not really into the rest of it. I say the rest of it, like maybe the first half is like early. Mind you, they've put out a lot lately. I was looking through, and they've put out a lot of stuff. It's too abstract, too glitch for me now almost. Which some people will be saying, what? No, what? Too abstract, too glitch? What the hell's wrong with you, 5D? But yeah, so moving on to the first track. Ooh, that was quite a lot of talkiness. The first track is, suitably called Calpol Intro. And this is actually in a movie I might have mentioned before in this podcast, by Darren Aronofsky, called Pi, which is, he's done some movies more lately, I'm not sure about, like Noah, or about Noah's Ark was a bit rubbish, but he's also done some of the best movies, one of which is Pi, which is a black and white one, very stylistic. It's about a schizophrenic mathematician. Yeah, I don't really want to ruin it. I mean, I could tell you, the gist of it is that he's comes up with this mad code, and he gets, people think it's the true name of God, or they think it's the way to predict the future. If they're scientists, if they're religious, they seem to think it's the true name of God, and equally powerful. And they chase him around, and he doesn't want any of it, and it does his nut in. But that doesn't ruin the ending, I hope. It doesn't ruin the ending. It's just telling you what's going on. But yeah, it's fun, and this track is in it, as well as a couple of other tunes. But yeah, this one is Calpol Intro, and here it comes. As it's called Intro, I thought it would be good to start with it. Running now. Yes, nice melodies there. Yeah, I love that one. Beautiful. Just to give you a little taste of these guys, Brown and Booth, that's their surnames, who met in Manchester's graffiti scene in 1987, I found out. But just to give you a little vibe of like what they were like, they did a protest EP against the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act of 1994, which was basically about trying to put down raves. Yeah, we don't need to go into why it was a shitty act. If you're listening to this, you understand this sort of thing, I'm sure. Yeah, but basically, it turns out that rave music had been defined as music which includes sounds wholly or predominantly characterized by the emission of a succession of repetitive beats. Now, the thing about the law is you do actually have to define stuff. So they released this EP and it came wrapped in a seal on which was printed a legal, and I'm doing legal, well, yeah, I mean, I'm putting it in inverted commas, but it kind of would work. And the legal warning was, Flutter has been programmed in such a way that no bars contain identical beats and can therefore be played at both 45 and 33 revolutions under the proposed new law. However, we do advise DJs to have a lawyer and a musicologist present at all times to confirm the non-repetitive nature of the music in the event of police harassment. Absolutely brilliant. I guess it was a sort of, you know, it's a bit of a joke, but simultaneously, yeah, a serious point and a bit of a protest. And I like that because I genuinely believe that if you were doing a rave and you played something that didn't have the repetitive beats, and then the police came and you had a lawyer present and a musicologist, you could get them to sod off. Oh, brilliant. But we do like our repetitive beats as well, to be honest. So, yeah, so double-edged sword there. But yeah, thought you just had to hear about that. I just discovered that information because I was having a little browse through Wikipedia just to find some interesting stuff. But yeah, up next, I'll just run into a new track now. I think we're gonna have Clipper. Yeah, this is a track called Clipper. See how you like it. Here we go. AUTECHRE there. Nice beats, nice melodies, and synth lights. Yeah, gotta love that. So yeah, two of my favourite tunes ever are by AUTECHRE. One's called Foil, which is coming up next, and another which is called the Let RMX. Yeah, they do have some weird names, especially later on. The names went really coolly out there. But yeah, I have this memory. I mean, this is how heavy this is. You know, I've got, you know, when you've got one of those tracks by someone in your head that is contained with a memory of just something. It doesn't even have to be something particularly poignant. It can just be a time when you heard the music. And yeah, this for me, the whole album, Amber, came sort of around, you know, well, let me just double check quickly. Yeah, it was 1994, and I'd listened to it a bit, but I just have this memory of listening to it on a train heading through Portugal, I believe. It might have been Spain. Actually, possibly might have been, or south of France, somewhere around that area. Might have even been Switzerland. I'm not entirely sure. It was somewhere in the sort of Western Europe, on a train, going somewhere else, and just having the headphones in, looking out the window, and just having one of those moments. And this track next, Foil, was the most epic of those moments. I love it. It's incredible. It's one of my best favourite ambient tracks ever. And it's just, yeah, I'm not going to try and explain why. Just going to let it run, and you can make up your own mind. Or make up your own heart, depending on how much it vibes you. And here we are, Foil, running. Yeah, still gets me, that track. It's just the floatiness, the subtlety of the percussion, the melody and the music is incredibly simple, yet works great. You're not left wanting more, but it's just as little as they can get away with. But it's the crafting of the modulation of the synths that is just, epic. One of the best. But anyway, everyone's got their own opinion. Hope you liked it. Yeah, so moving on, the next track I'm going to play is called Bike. And I'm just trying to work out. Oh yeah, it's from Incunabula, which, I mean, I don't know why I pronounced it like that, but this was their first full album, as I believe. It was the first one that sort of became a big success on Warp Records. It's probably how I more likely to end up hearing them. Their very first stuff was on Scam Records, which was kind of a bit like Warp. It was a label based out of Manchester. They had like Boards of Canada and other people, and they were like a bit like Warp Records, but from Manchester. Very good label as well. If you haven't heard a bunch of stuff from Scam, check it out. Anyway, like I said, up next is from their sort of big hit first full-on album, and it's called Bike on Incunabula. So here we go. This is the track, and have a listen. See you in a bit. Yeah, chilled, vibesing, floaty ambience there. The next track up is called Montreal, and it's from Amber. So it's again one of those tunes. It's got one of my. They've actually made some of my favorite noises ever, like synthy sort of noises. The one coming up in this track, Montreal, is like, dude, typical. 5D was gonna do a beatbox impression then of a synth, but instantly realised while attempting to initiate the attempt, he wouldn't get away with it. Yeah, vocal cords can only do so much. So I'm not going to do the impression. Do you know what I want to do the impression? It's just so I can pass over the information to you what I think is this favourite sound of mine, because I love it so much and I just want to pass on the vibe that I like. But yeah, here's the track Montreal coming in about a few seconds, and yeah, the point is, yeah, maybe you can hear the noise in it and just be like, oh, of course, that's the noise that 5D would like. But yeah, it's up to you to work that out, see what you like anyway. Yeah, Vibesing, Montreal from AUTECHRE on their album Amber. Here it is. Yeah, just really quickly jumping back in to be like, this is the noise, this one. It's just such a good one, isn't it? Anyway, I'll let the track play. So yeah, nice one there. Ambience extraordinaire. I'm not sure if that quite means what I thought it did. But yeah, that is AUTECHRE with Montreal. Love that track. It's one of my faves as well. Up next is, if it's possible, moving into an even more ambient territory, where they basically just have a melody in a nicely crafted synth, and that's it. Yeah, it doesn't have the rest of things that you may find in a track, like drums or, you know, all the other bits. And it's called Yulquen. Yeah, here it is. I'll just let it play and yeah, have a listen. And see you on the flip side. Yeah, definitive ambient chill. Definitely definitive, definitely ambient, definitely chill. Next up, we have a slightly more, you know, upbeaty, beaty sort of tune. CPAC, that's C-P-A-C-H. And it's from Tri Repeti. I always thought that was a good name for an album. Tri Repeti, I don't know, you can find it. But I'll just let it run now. Check this vibe.
CPAC there. So, moving on again. Yeah, I'm kind of running out of things to say. I don't know everything about all the tracks, or it's not possibly as nerdy. Well, I think I nerded out pretty well at the beginning. I think we've had some good stuff. I got a little bit just of chat about the final track, but that's not yet. But in the meantime, might as well just move on to the next one. This is another beautiful melodic chill ambient vibe one, and it's called UTOW. That's EUTOW. Here it is. Float on this one. Yeah, the end there, sort of washing up like water on a beach, waves on a beach. I quite like that. I'd forgot about the ending. Sort of, you know, yeah, I wonder if you feel what I feel about the washing up of the music at the end. Like I think that was I'm quite pleased with that analogy. It did sound like that. It's quite often hard to describe stuff, things that sound like what music sounds like, I think. So I'm quite happy with that. I don't often come up with things that sort of seem that, in my mind, to work so well. Anyway, the penultimate tune. This is 9, and it's from Amber again. And yeah, it's another chill one. I mean, they're all pretty chilled, to be fair. There's not really many not chilled old. Well, I say that. My favourite of all their old tracks are pretty chilled. But here it is, 9, running, penultimate tune. Yeah, I love that little voxy bit where they've got that bit of a vocal. Sounds like a vocal sample, some sort of formant or vocal sample, and just sort of stretched it out and mashed it, as they do perfectly. Yeah, that's the thing about AUTECHRE. If you're listening, I just point out one more time, it's the beautiful ambience mixed with the incredible synth work. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do synth work, you've got to do it good. You can't half-ass that shit. And they definitely killed it. So yeah, time for the last track. I'm going to say goodbye in a bit, well, a sec, but first I'm going to tell you it's V-Let RMX. Special little place in my heart for this tune. Personally, it's one of the best tunes at conjuring up for me this image and feel, I don't know why, but for me, of like the end of the universe, like the heat death of the universe, where everything is just, you know, it sort of makes it seem almost positive vibe rather than like everything is dying. Oh no, we're fucked. We can't make anything happen again in the universe. It's sort of like a playing out of it, chilled ending. I don't know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. I don't know if you're gonna know what I'm talking about. But yeah, this track, we'll let it play in its entirety. Yeah, I won't be back afterwards. It's just enough time to say goodbye. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week, or you'll hear me next week, or I might see you if you live in Mumsy. But yeah, what I was trying to say, that's what I was trying to say. This track is pretty much inspired for me entirely my second album, which was called Encoded Reality, which was about, I mean, it inspired me in the way that this track conjures up the end of the universe. And I thought I'd do Encoded Reality like the story of the entire universe, where I started with like the Big Bang track and ended with my idea of the end, which was actually called The End, sort of inspired by this, if you see what I'm saying. So yeah, if you like weird music, trippy stuff, get over to hear my album, Encoded Reality. That's by me, Deep and Beeper. And also, yeah, if you didn't know AUTECHRE and you've just found them, or you found some new stuff, buy them. Yeah, listen to it. Check, it's great. I love this stuff. Right, anyway, signing out. It's me, 5D, with the VLETRMX track. Signing us out, and possibly signing out the AI at the end of time. On repeat, who knows? Well, on repeat might be a bit much. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now. Have a good one, guys and gals. Bye.